Don Mazzella here again for Small Business Digest. We have what I consider a great guest. He certainly comes across as a booming personality, um, and he's here to talk about something that I'm sure here in the audience have heard about, but I haven't. So, Ray, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about some experiential marketing. But before we do that, I figure I'd give you and your audience a little backstory about.
Wait a second. Before you go further, we want to first know a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I'll give you the high level overview. So, for the past 20 years, our company, Old City Media, has been out producing world class events. So, what I mean by that, Major League Baseball team, they go on the road. So they're out of the ballpark for maybe a week or 2 weeks on a road trip. Our agency would come into the ballpark and produce a world-class festival. Could be a beer festival. It could be a food festival, like something you're eating right now. You name it. No shortage of events. So that's really what I've done for the past 20 years, producing events, coordinating events, and really being involved in the event space. COVID lands on our lap, right? Can't bring people together, no large social gatherings. I had to pivot like everyone else and adapt to the environment. So, not being able to produce events, that's the bad news. The good news, for the past 20 years, I was able to establish all these relationships with brands. And these brands would come out to our events. No one's shaking hands and kissing babies anymore, but they would come out to the events to engage with our audience. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been working with these brands as it relates to experiential marketing and helping these brands go out into the market and engage the community by not just going to events, but also going to other establishments like your local hardware store or your local grocery store. So that's a little bit about me. I've been involved in the special events in marketing space for over 20 years. I had to adapt and pivot a little bit during COVID. And now I'm helping these brands out from an experiential standpoint, going out to engage the community.
A company name and your website?
Yeah, the company is Old City Media, and the company address is www.oldcitymedia.com.
Where did you come up with a great name like that?
So my business partner, so I'm calling you today from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there's a little neighborhood in Philadelphia called Old City, and my business partner and I, Brian, were there, and that's where we met, and that's where we started producing these events over 20 years ago. It was the Old City section of Philadelphia, and that's really the impetus. That's really where it started when I was going to school at Temple University. So that's where my roots are.
Oh, okay. Now, explain to me what you meant by that, by the term you use.
So what I mean by experiential marketing, if you really think about it, think about experience. So I'm a brand and I'm trying to sell you something, whatever it is, whatever it's a widget, insurance, a cell phone, whatever the case may be. And a lot of your viewers, a lot of your audience out there, they probably have a product or service that they are trying to sell. A great way to engage a consumer, a great way to speak to that consumer is by an experience. It's an opportunity for the brand to not come across so salesy. It's an opportunity for the brand to come out and integrate their company into the fabric of the community. And the way of doing that could be by an event. Maybe it's a charity event. So the experiential marketing really is this essentially is the word experience tied to an event and the marketing. And it's called experiential marketing. And we help brands all the time try to figure out interesting ways and creative ways for them to take their brand out into the market and market their brand properly.
Can you give us an example of one?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you are in home improvement. You're a home improvement brand. Maybe you're doing gutters or roofing or windows and doors, whatever, solar, could be anything. So you're a home improvement brand. clearly you're going to place ads, whether they're digital ads, whether they're your more traditional ads, and there's ways to engage and market to different people based off of where you're placing those ads. Here's how I'm going to engage a millennial or Gen Z or someone older, whatever the case may be. And then there are ways to go out and market your brand from an experiential standpoint. And a way of doing that might be at your local hardware store. So think about Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware. Think about the audience that is going into a home improvement or into a hardware store. They're typically not teenagers. They're typically not renters, right? You very rarely do you find a renter making capital improvements to their home. So if you're at Ace Hardware, if you're at Lowe's, or if you're at Home Depot, there's a high probability that the audience going into that establishment is a homeowner. And if I'm a Renewal by Anderson and I'm trying to sell windows and doors, this is a perfect place for me to do a little experiential marketing based off of the audience or the clientele going into that establishment. So now I'm essentially fishing where the fish are, right? I'm check that box. How can I get in front of my target audience? How can I engage the consumer that's most likely to purchase my product? That's just one example of some experiential marketing based off of me being a home improvement company. Does that make sense?
It does. Now I understand it. But let me ask you this question. Now I want to go into, let's say, Lowe's. What do you do? What kind of event? And you got like 600 stores. What do you do? Do an event for every one of the stores?
So it really depends. So it depends on, so you have the brand. So I'm T-Mobile, right? I'm in the business of selling cell phones and whatever. I'm Lowe's, right? So I'm in the business of just getting the consumer in here and obviously getting that consumer to point of purchase. So if I'm T-Mobile, I want to be able to go out and I want to be able to go out to Lowe's Home Improvement and I want to enhance the customer experience. Because if you're preventing that consumer to get to point of purchase, Lowe's is not going to want you there, right? You're interfering with my audience. You're interfering with my customer. But if you're going to enhance that customer experience, that's amazing because they can go to Home Depot. They can buy a gallon of paint at Home Depot, right? I'm Lowe's. We're both selling the same thing. So if T-Mobile's going to come out, maybe they do spin the wheel. Maybe you're giving them a free pair of sunglasses or a koozie or a t-shirt or a bag, or it's a Lowe's gift card. So now I'm the end consumer. I just went to Lowe's. I just got a free bag, free t-shirt, and a free $10 gift card. There's a high probability me as the consumer, I'm going to think more favorable about Lowe's now that I've been there. And conversely, if T-Mobile's there, T-Mobile was able to cut the clutter, lower that consumer's barrier, and have a conversation that you just simply can't have listening to an ad on the radio or watching on TV. Great, you're building brand there. So there's obviously value of doing that sort of marketing. But when you're having a conversation with that end consumer at Lowe's and you're able to ask a lot of different questions of, tell me about your 5G network, for example, that's when it really works. And that's where it becomes really powerful. So we're not going to Lowe's. We're not turning it into a circus. Yet what we are doing is creating a better customer experience at their property. Does that make sense?
It does. But now I'm a small business, which is where our audience is. What do you do for them?
Yeah, this works for anyone. I mean, you don't necessarily need to be Renewal by Anderson or Lowe's. There are a lot of small businesses out there that would love this sort of enhancement. So you're a small business. You could be, who knows, could have a landscaping business, right? Small landscaping business or a small t-shirt business, whatever the case may be. If you are a small business owner, the one thing that I believe that you should be doing, how can you create strategic partnerships? How can you leverage someone else's audience, brand, email list? So how can you partner with them? How can you provide some sort of value to their clientele? So if you're a small brand and you're looking to potentially partner with, let's say, a garden center or a hardware store or a coffee shop, whatever the case may be, or it's just an event, right? There's a lot of events out there. One way you can do it is providing that host location or that event producer some sort of value. So if you're a small landscaping company, you have a few employees, how can you provide some value to that partner for that partner now to promote and essentially endorse your brand? And as you know, that's the best form of marketing, is any sort of a recommendation.
Right. Absolutely. So, I come to you. Let's say I sell a software to enable me to manage my fleet of 7 plumbers out there. Where would I go? Who should I be hooking up with? A retailer or where do we go to enhance to find these partnerships?
So it really depends. You might be B2B, you might be B2C. And if you, so you, it would really depend on who are you trying to engage? First off, once you figure out your target audience of who you're trying to get in front of, then you need to develop the strategy based off of who you are trying to engage. So if you're trying to engage, like your example, if you're trying to engage plumbers, of like, okay, how can I get in front of other plumbers? Okay, well, let me figure out exactly where plumbers go. And maybe they're going to, we mentioned hardware stores, right? Plumbers are constantly going to need different types of materials, merchandise to potentially fix a job. So to me, that would be a good area. That would be a good platform. That would be an area that I would want to focus on. Like, okay, how can I get in front of a plumber potentially at a hardware store, knowing that's where they're going to need to go eventually to get some PVC piping?
Mhm.
And then you kind of start there. And each segment, each vertical is different. And if any of your viewers had questions, they can absolutely reach out to oldcitymedia.com. I then can say, okay, let me understand your business. Let me understand your target audience. Based off of that, here is a strategy. Here's a way that you could go out and engage to get in front of that audience and to do it through an experiential marketing tactic.
Mhm. It's fascinating. Now I understand where you're coming from. So your website again for our audience so they can learn more.
Yeah, the website's very easy. It's oldcitymedia.com.
Okay, so I come to you, I say, Ray, I want to let's go and say I'm a B2B um, offering to improve the management of my sales force. Let's say, um, w- what are the questions you would be asking me, and then what are the questions I should be asking you?
So you're B2B, and so what are you? So my first question is, what are you trying to solve? So for me, from a sales perspective, and this, I look at things like, okay, I first have to identify your problem. So
Mm,
for me, I want to know what are your challenges? What exactly are you trying to do? What are your objectives? Once I have that, then I can customize the plan, the program, the strategy, the tactic based around what your needs are. So if you're B2B, and what was it? Give me an example. What give me an objective of something you would be trying to do.
my objective is to talk to companies under 25 employees who have still not fully automated their management systems.
Got it. So you want to talk to smaller companies under 25 employees. How can you get in front of them besides the traditional cold calling and stuff like that,
Right.
picking up the phone? So what I would personally do is experiential marketing can also live in the field of expos and conventions. So there's probably a group of, it's an industry. So if I know that I want to go out and have a conversation with that industry and I'm looking for a certain demographic or a certain kind of subset of people, what I would love to do is I want to be at some sort of a convention. I want to know where all these industry leaders are. I want to know where these kind of called leadership people are, and that's where I want to promote my brand. I want to make sure I'm at an event or expo like that because I know that's going to give me the ability to engage a bunch of different people.
Hmm. Well, what about, for instance, the Lions and the Kiwanis, etc.? They, to me, are gathering places, but they're boring. Basically, they're boring meetings. Do you do you help people, for instance, enhance those meetings?
No, but that would be another strategy of experiential marketing of going out and saying, "Hey, where are people congregating, and how can I get in front of those people?" I just used an example of a convention, right? There's a lot of business owners
Right.
there. To your point, that have under 25 employees. Maybe it's to your point. Maybe it's the Lions Group. Maybe it's could be a charity, right? Could be charity functions, right? There's a lot of time where a charity group is putting together an event and there's business leaders at that particular charity function. So if there's a platform, if there's a way for you to go out and meet with these people and get in front of these people and educate these people, yeah, that would be another vertical that you'd potentially would want to explore.
Do you also supply, for instance, if you see an event, which is a charity event, and they say you can have a booth or something there, do you supply the people that man the booth, or do you ask your client to man the booth?
So we can do both. So we have brand ambassadors on our team. We have promotional models on our team. It's always my advice that if you can't man the booth or if you can't be there, obviously hiring brand ambassadors, that's a good plan B. What I usually recommend, can you send one person? So a lot of times they look at a convention or an event and they say, oh, how am I going to send 4 or 5 of my top salespeople? Or I just don't have the bandwidth. Well, maybe you can send one person and then you supplement that with some brand ambassadors. And the brand ambassadors, their job is to basically bring people over to the booth. You give them enough information to be dangerous. Here are some top line, 30,000 foot view, high level points about our business. Here's why you should work with it. Here's our point of difference. Here's whatever the case may be, right? Some top line stuff that someone could remember. Then, if someone has some detailed questions and they want to get a little more granular, at least someone from your team is there. So, to answer your question, yes, we can absolutely provide brand ambassadors and sales support. My recommendation is always, though, it's very helpful to at least send one person from your team because if there are some technical questions or if someone's really interested and you want to eventually get that lead into the lead funnel, having an expert there, or at least someone from your team, would be really, really important.
Well, when you say, well, for instance, at the Javits Center in New York, there's a convention, 2 or 3 conventions a week there. Do you do you help someone set up a booth there and help man it? Is
Yeah,
that
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We've been there before. We've helped some of our consumer packaged goods there. Pedras, which is it's a Portuguese water. We've done some events there, setting up the booth, booking the promotional models, handling all the marketing assets, marketing materials. Because it was a food show, the Food Fancy show, which
yeah,
is what's
my favorite show?
you know,
Uh,
so you're you're
but
familiar. So we've been at that show when obviously, and you know how massive that show is. And we're there obviously to engage different restaurateurs, hotel managers about pay dress, right? So it was a great vertical. And yes, there were brand managers there. And then we also had promotional models there just to bring people over to the booth, let them get intimate with the brand, let them sample the brand. But if somebody was like, okay, I own a restaurant, I'm interested in bringing in the Pedras water. How do I go about this? At least someone was there to help facilitate that order.
let me ask you this question, which goes back to when I go to a show. Oftentimes, if I walk down the aisle, the people will be there, and they almost ignore me as I walk down the aisle. rather than try to engage me. Every once in a while, I get somebody who's smart enough to try to engage, but most of the time, is that something? It seems to me that one of the biggest problems for any event where people interact is a lot of people don't know how to interact. Do you help people establish how to present their brand?
Yeah, we handle everything from cradle to grave. So it's the problem is with this, it's it's not like a science, almost like an art form, right? So think about it, and your viewers know this. How many times have you walked down the mall and that guy tries spraying you with the perfume? Like you avoid that guy, right? You try, hardcore solicitation. Nobody likes that. So that's a little too aggressive. But someone, what I instruct the people with RB, make eye contact. Simple as making eye contact and just say hello to someone. Granted, you might say hello 1,000 times, but just saying hello to someone, how are you doing? How is your day? Would you like a bottle of water? Something as simple as that, of just going out and just being friendly and hospitable to some people goes a long way. So that's usually my tactic. That's usually my strategy is kill them with kindness, be really friendly, stay in your lane, stay in your area. And if you say hello to someone, you make eye contact and they're interested, they will walk over. You don't need to go after them. You don't need to engage them. If they're interested, and humans are just naturally, we're curious creatures. We're just naturally curious individuals. So that's usually what I instruct the brand ambassadors to do. And I love usually having things at the table, whether it's mints, whether it's water, whether it's just little things that they can come over, have a piece of chocolate, pre-wrapped chocolate, obviously thinking now post-COVID, and doing things like that just to bring someone over just to say, here you go, good luck at the show and have a fantastic day. Little things like that, you'd be surprised at how much engagement you get.
Ray, we have just a few minutes left. First thing, your website again and how people can reach you.
Yeah, the website's really easy. It's oldcitymedia.com. Again, my name's Ray. So the email address is Ray, R-A-Y, at oldcitymedia.com. My contact information is on the website. If anyone wants to have some deeper conversation like we're having today and go through some real different live examples and go through an exercise of like, Ray, this is my business. This is my challenge. This is who I'm trying to engage. That to me is really helpful. Then we can go through an exercise of really developing a strategy of how you can get in front of those potential customers. And there's ways of doing it fairly cheap. So no, thank you so much for having me. It was
Wait,
great
wait,
chatting.
I'm not finished. You get a chance to say what would you like to leave the audience with?
Well, I guess depending on who's watching this, I'm sure there's a lot of other hungry young business owners out there. So the only thing I would say is just, I wish everyone out there the best of luck. And if there's anything that our agency can do to help your brand, please, again, reach out to me and would love to have a conversation with you.
Well, I'm going to ask you a specific one. I have a book coming out, okay, a trilogy. But what do you have any ideas as to how? And I get this all the time because authors come on my program a lot. What are some of the things you would do in this capacity to get people to get other people to buy their books?
So tell me a little bit about your book.
Well,
Give me.
my book is about an unsung American naval hero in World War II. It's the trilogy. Uh, the first volume is about World War II. The second one's the Cold War, and the third one is um, we don't even have to mention. But the point is, myself and a lot of other authors right now are facing the dilemma that there's very uh, getting people to identify and want to read our books becomes very difficult because there's so many books flooding the marketplace. What are some of the things that you would do to get people to get their book higher in the maw of the other books?
That's a really good question. So my knee-jerk reaction would be knowing that there's obviously there's a military hook here, right? And again, I haven't read your book. This
Yeah.
is the first I'm hearing about it, but clearly there is an affinity out there with people that obviously are passionate about our military and armed forces. So for me, you mentioned potentially VFW, right? So there's obviously there's the VFW. There's Boy Scouts of America. There are different types of military groups out there. So for me, I would love to figure out who could I partner with? Where could I potentially donate some books? Where could I go knowing that there's going to be an audience that would have a high interest for my book? And something as simple as this, and the only reason I'm thinking of it, because it just passed a month ago. So in Philadelphia, there's the Army-Navy football game. And hundreds of thousands of people are in Philadelphia for the Army-Navy football game. So clearly there's a huge audience of people that either were in military, they have an affinity towards military. So to me, if I'm promoting a book or if I have a book that has a military background to it, that would be an area, those would be things, those would be little events, little functions that are going on. That would probably be an area that I know someone there would absolutely have an interest in reading my book. And then I would start there. I would develop some relationships. I would develop some partnerships. You're getting the people talking about your book. And then from there, it's like, okay, so that's my tier one. Well, where else am I going now? How else can I go out and promote my book? Well, maybe it's universities, maybe it's school, maybe it's where people that have a thirst for knowledge, they're constantly want to get smarter. Then it's there. Then maybe I'm going into like book clubs, right? So I'm going online and I'm engaging different types of book clubs. So for me, I would try to figure out what are different areas that I can go, knowing that this is an audience that's probably going to have a real interest in my book. That's my knee-jerk reaction. Typically, I go through a much longer process of understanding the book, understanding the content, understanding your audience, and then really building out a plan. But you caught me on the spot. That would be my knee-jerk reaction.
Well, you're good on your feet. And on that note, we say thank you very much for a very illuminating time together. Thank you.
Thank you.